and Colin Klein and that Kansas State team were number 1 in the country, and they were playing Baylor. And I was at a bar after we had won our game, and like my parents were there. We're all watching it. This place is going nuts. And we got it on both TVs in the bar. And we watched Stanford kick a last-second field goal to beat Oregon, so they're going down. And then we look up and we see the score of that K-State game, and everyone's losing their mind, like, we're going to be number 1 in the country. And I'm like, Alabama's going to be number 2. Like, we got to batten up and get ready for this, because we could just play Kansas State, who I still contend today we would have beat like a drum, which is easy to say because we don't have to play the game. But that was an interesting lead up to that game, to say the least.
No, that's crazy. Like, I remember that, like, I remember y'all game, but I really remember like you said, coming up to y'all game, like the hopes. Like, it was a lot of hopes for y'all. Y'all hoping this team win, that team loses. Like, yeah, that was a great. Was this one of the first years of the playoffs, I want to say?
No, so we were one of the last years before
the regular.
So
yeah. Okay.
So we played in the 2012-2013 championship game.
Last year.
Florida State won the next year, and then the year after that was the first year of the playoff when Ohio State won.
Gotcha. Okay, yep. Yeah, that makes sense then for sure.
Y'all had Tyler Eifert on that team then, right? That was.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We had Eifert on that squad. T.J. Jones played in the NFL for a while. Theo Riddick played in the NFL for a little while. You know, we had. And then obviously, like Zach and those guys, our defense was chock full of dudes too. But it was a good squad, man. Good group of dudes, like a fun team, and one that's always fun to catch up with whenever we got the time.
Awesome. So, Golic, talk to us a little bit about, after, your playing days at Notre Dame and you spend a little time in the NFL and you bounce around. Talk about, the transition from college to the pros and your journey.
Yeah, so I was one of those guys that was self-aware enough to go, all right, you started 17 games playing, all right football and developing late in college. Probably not going to be a draft pick. Your agent tells you, well, you might be a late round guy. You might be an undrafted free agent. I said, I'm going to prepare for this. Like, I'm going to be an undrafted free agent. I'm going to bust my ass as best I can and try and put myself in the right spot and be ready for the opportunity. The Steelers call. I went to, the offseason program with them as a rookie in 2013. That was, Le'Veon Bell was second-round pick in that draft class. Landry Jones was there. So that draft class of guys in that group. And, you go through that process, and it's sort of an eye-opening learning experience in that one. You really start to learn, kind of like Will said, I found a vet right away. And Ramon Foster, who just retired this last year, played guard in Pittsburgh, was an undrafted free agent himself. And that year, they didn't draft an offensive lineman. There were 4 of us that were undrafted. And he took us all out to dinner really early on in that process. And he said, he's like, they're going to be looking for every reason to get rid of you through all of this. Like, don't let them take your joy away. Go out here and attack this thing. And, for me, I had played center and guard all through college. I ended up coming in, and the first practice of rookie minicamp, they had me listed on the depth chart at right tackle, that I was not athletic enough to play at all when it came to that. So I'm like, all right.
Isn't that the scariest thing? Isn't that like, people don't understand how scary that is. Like, especially as a rookie coming in, for one, you don't even know your position.
Man, that was the crazy part. And so I went back, like, break you have between, like, so we went through, like, rookie minicamp and OTAs and all that stuff. And we get done with that last minicamp, and we got that break before the season. And so I went back to Notre Dame, and I was working out there with Zach Martin and Chris Watt, who ended up being a draft pick for us, working out with Coach Easton. And I was like, Coach, I need some tackle drills. Like, they got me playing right tackle. Like, I got to figure this out on the fly. And so I'm retraining myself to do tackle. Like, unfortunately, you know how it goes. Injuries and stuff happen through the first couple weeks. I finally get to slide back in at guard. And I remember, like, the first practice I got to play guard again, Marquise Pouncey looks over me and goes, oh, man, you're kind of beastie. I was like, yeah, it's good to be home, man. Like, it's good to be back outside with the guys that I belong with down here. So, but yeah, so, like, it was a learning experience. I got cut there. I went another year and worked out, tried to get back in it, got into camp with the Saints that next year in that offseason, got cut in the middle of June at that cap date so they could sign Jonathan Goodwin there to play center for them that year. And from there, I went and did CFL training camp for the Montreal Alouettes. I ended up playing in a fall experimental league, the FXFL, the predecessor to the XFL, which you really learn how much you love football when you are living in a Holiday Inn Express in Staten Island for 3 months, getting ready to play for next to nothing. Like, I still have not gotten the last 3 paychecks from that league and never lived. So
like JUCO again, didn't it?
Man, I would say it was one of those where you look around, but like it does bring you back, and like all the guys there are a bunch of dudes like Jordan Dangerfield, who still plays with the Steelers now, was on that team with us. There were a couple other guys that made their way back onto rosters, and you're all there. You all understand what you're working towards, and so it really galvanizes you. Like, we're working out at a 24-hour fitness. I'm going over there the day after games and trying to get a bar on my back and stuff. People are looking at me like I'm crazy, and it just kind of reminded you, all right, this is why I'm doing all of this. And so I got through that season, had one more shot with the Saints, went to training camp with them, and at that point I was like, all right, I'm going to give this everything I have. I'm 3 years into this right now. You know, I've been cut at the end of all these camps. I kind of knew that was going to be the window. And I was like, I'll leave it all out there. I'm going to give it my best shot this preseason. And if they cut me, I got to start looking for a job that wants me back a little bit. Because at this point, I felt like football was trying to sell me a message that I wasn't ready to receive just yet. So went to camp with the Saints, ended up getting cut at the end of that one, you know, the second time around with them. And again, getting to learn from a lot of great guys. You know, Jari Evans was still there. Zach Strief was their right tackle for a long time. Max Unger, who just retired, was their starting center at that point, who were all, you know, super gracious and able to like help me become the best version of my O-line self through the course of that process. And it just, you know, it didn't work out. And it's one of those things I can look back and I'll always wish I had gotten to play NFL ball like so many of the guys that I've seen and like Will's doing right now. But, you know, you can take peace in the fact that it's all right. You know what? I gave it all I could. And if, you know, 1 or 2 things broke, who knows what happens, but it didn't. And I had to control what I can control. It wasn't enough, and we keep it moving.
For sure, for sure. So what I want to know, and I'm pretty sure our fans would like to too, you're the first person we ever had on that played in another league besides the NFL, you know? So just talk about how's the Canadian Football League, like how was that experience just going up there?
It is wild, man. Just getting used to all the different rules, like, and getting used to a different culture. You know, I'm in Montreal, so there's, you know, signs all over the place in French. It's just it's for as Americanized as certain parts of the city are, there's still other parts that are a bit of a shock. I got loonies and toonies jingling around in my pocket when I'm trying to go get coffee. And but getting used to the rules, I think, was the wildest thing. You know, the defense is a yard off the ball. There's another guy on the field, so you've got like essentially another nickel or dime defender out there in the course of this. And there's all these rules I didn't know at the time about how many American players you can have on the roster, how many Americans you can have starting on the field at any one given time. And so you get up there and you're like, all right, I'm going to try for this opportunity. And then you're like, wait a minute, I'm going to get trapped on a roster up here where, like, because of all these rules, I might not even play in the 2 years that I'm here. And so it was definitely another interesting look at the business side of all these sports where, you know, they've got certain things, but like Chad Johnson was on that team with me. Troy Smith from Ohio State was on that team with me up there. Like, there were some NFL names that had made their way up north of the border at that time that were sort of wild to run into.
Oh, that's crazy. Yeah, y'all was cold then, it sounded like. like literally and physically.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say definitely physically and all that for sure.
Oh man, that's awesome. So what's the so in the NFL, so what was your craziest moment coming into the NFL though? Like, you know, as a rookie, what was that moment like? Wow, I made it to the NFL, that wow moment. Like,
well, you know what? I would say like my welcome to the NFL moment where I go, wow, these dudes are built different was I was playing guard and I went to pass off. They were running a TT stun inside. So I think it was Steve McClendon was the nose and he pinched down that way. So I passed him off to the center and Cam Hayward comes peeling around as the looper on that one. And Cam just, I mean, the biggest, hardest head. And so I had gotten a little bit too much depth trying to pass off the penetrator. And Cam just comes and literally headbutts the hell out of me. I go back straight ass over tea kettle on that one. And I go, all right, like we're gonna have to drop that ass a little bit and kind of lean into this one a little bit more.
Definitely. I definitely can say mine was this year, and I'll go ahead and tell everybody about it. I don't care. But I got a rude awakening from Geno Atkins, dog.
Geno Atkins.
Man, I would say I had a buddy that played in Cincinnati before Geno got the big deal and said that dude is just – because he doesn't, like, look like much when he's going up to the line. Like, he's super duck-footed and he's laid down into his stance.
I'm telling you, but he is so explosive. But I'm going to tell you what makes him amazing more than anything, his leverage. He's so low to the ground. His center of gravity is he's so interconnected, and he's so low to the ground and has so much leverage that once he gets fitted underneath you – and he rolls his hips, you're done if you're not at his level or lower, because he's already super strong. So if you don't get lower than him, you won't beat him, like, for sure. And I always pick what AJ can, because AJ handles the people that I struggle with a little bit more. Well, I struggle with those little guys that aren't little and just go to power. Those little guys that are little and got leverage and can jump around like your Jarrell Casey's and stuff. But I always pick with AJ about, like, yeah, AJ, me and you good with those guys because they like your size and your height. Like, they can't out leverage you. Like, like, I'm a 6'5" guard. Like, some of these little tackles and inside, if I don't get low, they'll out leverage me and they'll beat me there. And Gino gave me a rude awakening that game this past year up in Cincinnati.
Hey, man, I would say, you know what? There is no shame in that one, because Gino has given that same rude awakening to a lot of dudes.
Yeah, for sure. And I felt so bad about it until, like, the next day, like, I was just talking to Cam and AJ and all the guys about it. They're like, bro, like, you got to realize, like, bro, that's this Gino. You ain't just talking about any regular defensive tackle doing this. You're talking about this Gino Atkins. Like, I promise you wasn't the first one. Like, and I'm looking on Twitter. I'm just like, I just see myself getting like.
Well, that's the worst part now, man. It's like people can clip and post this stuff.
And then Cody's always on my ass. Like, he's sending me these posts like, hey, bro, check this out. I'm like, yeah, all right. You
know what? That's how you know you got a real friend, though. The ones that are going to be there lifting you up when that happens versus the ones that are pointing and laughing at you. The one that tends to laugh is the real friend.
Well, what's crazy, Mike, is he's a huge Cincinnati fan. So he probably has this freaking tweet pinned on his page, and just like, he likes to just talk about it here and there, you know, like.
Never mind. You know what? Now that feels kind of messed up.
Yeah, Gino ain't gonna get you this year, Will. We be in the weight room. I'm like, man, let me hit this extra rep. Like, oh, man, that's great, though, yo. But like you said, it happens to the best of us, man. It happens to the best.
Oh, that's funny. So, Mike, when did you know, like, hey, football might not be it for me. It's not the end game. And, you know, I need to do something different. And, like, how did, radio and being on ESPN, how did that come about?
Yeah, I'd always known I wanted to get into sports media when I was done. I knew that in high school, and so I was super fortunate just because, being around it with Dad, understanding personality-wise, we were pretty similar. I always liked holding court in the locker room and kind of having these discussions anyway. And so when I got to college, Notre Dame didn't really have, like, college digital media departments were really just getting going then. And so I was fortunate when Fighting Irish Digital Media at Notre Dame was getting started, they wanted a couple guys to do, like, behind-the-scenes looks at the team that they could post on YouTube and stuff. And so me and my buddy Brandon Newman, who, was a page with Letterman after, worked at FS1, works at Barstool now, like, we were the two guys that were film and television majors at Notre Dame. And so we both wanted to dive into that, and we got to get a ton of reps doing stuff in college, doing all these behind-the-scenes looks at the team. And so then, I get done, and I'm going around trying to play pro ball, like I said, and me and Brandon started doing a podcast about Notre Dame football, and we're just, again, a way to get on, get in front of a microphone and get reps. And then the one that really kind of brought me closer towards ESPN was, certainly having my dad's help in that. I never make any bones about it. I had someone that was able to help me in there, but when I was in New York, staying at that Holiday Inn Express playing for the FXFL, one of my dad's old producers, a guy by the name of Justin Craig, who is my boss in radio now, oddly enough, here at ESPN, was working at our New York affiliate at the time. And I had known Justin since I was 12. Like, he was a producer on my dad's show when he was, 24 years old. And so he said, he's like, hey, if you've got some free time on the weekend, come in. We'll get you on the air for an hour, 2 hours with some of our weekend shows. And so I just would do that every weekend I was out there, and I would get a little bit of work in there and get a little bit of practice and talk to all them. And so fast forward 2 years later, when I'm getting cut in New Orleans in 2015, Justin's now back running radio at the national level back at ESPN in Bristol. And so him and my dad were the first call I make. And I was like, is there any show there, something on the weekends, anywhere where I can get in? And initially the answer was no. And so I kept, kind of poking around and seeing. And finally, there was a fantasy football show on Sundays on ESPN radio from 9 to 1 Eastern. And they came to me and they're like, all right, Mike, like, we got a fantasy show. Like, have you ever played fantasy before? And I nodded my head yes, knowing I'd never played fantasy football a day in my life. And so I was like, you know what? I will say yes first. And then I went and bought every fantasy football book, magazine, whatever it was. And just
you say this was in 2018?
That was in 2015.
2015, okay.
Yep.
Okay. That's dope.
Yeah, so it it was interesting. But yeah, I had always kind of known all along this is what I wanted to do. I just got there a little sooner than I expected and had to adjust.